Tickets from John Mulaney to Santana and the Doobie Brothers to My Chemical Romance and more. Don't wait. Enter now. KFAN.com. Keyword contest.
Tennafitzgerald sails on. Final hour. Twins in Boston tonight to take on the Red Sox, beginning a 3-game series. And we're pleased to be joined by Dan Hayes, who covers the Twins for The Athletic. Hello, Dan. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, man.
You in Boston?
No, I'm going to do the Chicago and Pittsburgh portion of the trip.
Okay.
Yeah, Boston's great. It's expensive, man. It's one of those places you can go to 2 other cities for the cost of one weekend in Boston. So,
really?
Yeah. Oh man, the hotels near the ballpark are ridiculous. But it's a great town. You just have to hope for midweek series, and it's all goes into the budget.
So I've never been to Boston. Obviously, never been to Fenway Park. Where does Fenway Park rank among your favorite MLB stadiums?
I mean, so we get the press box, so it's more comfortable. Those are old seats, as far as fan experience, but I think when you get there, you get wrapped up so much in what the experience is that you don't notice. But I mean, it's an old park. It's still a top 5. It's an icon, and it's hard to replicate that energy in a lot of places. And you're just looking at the green monster the whole time, and it's the Red Sox, right? And the only thing I could do without Sweet Caroline, but that's that. Aside from that, it's just an epic place to go to watch a baseball game.
All right, well, let's talk about the Twins, I guess. Well, first question is technically about the St. Paul Saints, because I want to ask you about Royce Lewis, a guy who not that long ago was getting comparisons to Kirby Puckett after his home run barrage in the postseason just, 3-4 years ago. Now getting sent down to St. Paul. He did hit a home run in his first at-bat last night at CHS Field for the Saints. What has gone wrong there? It seems like he's talking to multiple different hitting coaches. He's been changing his swing. How has this kind of spiraled the way it has with Royce Lewis?
Yeah, I think one thing is just a lack of development. I mean, you're looking at a guy who's 26, 27, but has missed 2+ full seasons because of those injuries. And I don't know, I think what happened was he was able to do so many things because he was a great athlete early on that it masked some, just at bats and developing and figuring things out. There was a point last year where he switched around the way he started and set up, as many as 5 times a game. And you could look at his stance and see 5 different setups in the same game. The lack of consistency was there, and I know he tried to address that this offseason and hire a hitting coach for the first time. A lot of guys will have somebody that they've always worked with. Royce has kind of bounced around on that. He'll work with Matt Kemp and Torrey Hunter, but last year I remember talking to him about it, and he said, yeah, but those guys are busy in their retirement, and I don't want to bug them about doing hitting changes. So he finally made the decision to hire a new coach this offseason. And you could tell, it came with recommendation from Jorge Polanco, who swore by him because Polanco put together a career year last year in Seattle working with this guy. So he came with good recommendations, but you could tell in spring training, Royce was still trying to figure it out and see if it would work. And it was clear it was a little slow, but at the start, he came out and he was giving himself longer to see pitches. His walk rate was way up. He was hitting for a little bit of power. He got hurt. And basically after that, it just all went away. Since he came back from the knee sprain or whatever they called it in early April, he's been striking out at a higher rate than by far his career, by 10, 12% higher than his career mark. And he's just looked all sorts of lost and, making swing decisions that, you can see a pitcher's a little bit wild and he's just aggressive and not seeing the ball. And you could just tell the last maybe 2 weeks that really he was struggling with it. And I know there's a ton of work that's been going in because, the Twins, and he talked about it, I think, with the guys in St. Paul yesterday, just how much work has gone in and trying to find it. And I don't know, this to me is a good timing to make this move. Just the timing is right because it gives them a chance to basically stop searching for results at the major league level and stop seeing that 160 batting average on the board, and just figuring out what works for himself and getting some confidence back, and then getting out there and doing it for a month, and then okay, now let's try it at the major league level. Like, I just think he needs this break. Early on there were signs that it could work, but it really, the last couple of weeks, was tough to watch, and we saw it trickle over into other areas. We saw him try to bunt for a base hit twice to get things going, and that's never a great sign. He misplayed a ball in the field in that Milwaukee game that was costly. It was a routine double play, and it's almost like he's that running back catching the pass in the flat and running before he actually secures the catch and dropping it, seeing the touchdown. It's one of those plays where it's like, oh, he's not in the right spot, and they needed to do this right now and try to get him right and salvage him, because they still think that there's a guy there, but they need to help him find it.
All right, well, let's stick with the St. Paul Saints then. How about Matt Wallner? Because I was at the game in St. Paul Wednesday night, and he struggled in that one. You could tell he was visibly frustrated in that game, not hitting well since he's gotten down to AAA. Is he still salvageable?
Yeah, I mean, that's what they're trying to find out. And yeah, I mean, look, we've seen Matt Wallner be a streaky guy before. And I think in 2024, they sent him down on maybe April 15th, and he didn't come back till July. But when he came back in July, he was one of the best hitters on the team for that last 2 months. When you look at his career numbers, the OPS plus is amazing. I think it was like 130 something going into this year. So there is a guy there. It's just, how do you get him to be consistent? And he's another guy who made some changes to simplify things going into the off season or going into the season, and just couldn't find it. And it's tough when you have streaky guys who are supposed to be some of your core guys. And that's the thing. They came into this season knowing that they needed to unlock the potential of Royce Lewis to get back on the winning track, knowing that they needed Matt Wallner to develop into more of a middle-of-the-order guy versus just a power guy towards the bottom. Because if Matt Wallner is like your seventh best hitter and hitting seventh in your lineup, that's a really good, he's a perfect fit for that. But they wanted to make him into a bit of a run producer because he's got that potential, and it's just, I don't know if that guy exists, but I do think that the power bat and the good eye is there, and he just needs to find it, and it's been a struggle for him so far too. So, these are big challenges for both these guys, because we're not talking about young kids anymore, and they have to make these adaptations and get going the right way, because the Twins desperately need them to be those guys, and so this is a critical period for both, for sure.
Year one of Derek Shelton as manager, what has he been like to work with and interact with, and how does he compare and contrast from a managing style standpoint to Rocco Baldelli?
Yeah, like interacting wise, you can see the way that he is very personable with his players and like has their trust. I've heard that word used a lot. And where that stood out to me was some of the younger guys hearing it from the veterans that they really liked the coaching staff and how they operated and the work being put in. And I think that this coaching staff is definitely a group that really gets after it and is connected with this team. I don't know that, I think that last year there were so many things to overcome with, your shortstop not being one of the highest paid players and being one of the worst players in baseball in the first half. I just didn't see, I don't know. I didn't like the mix last year. It was a tough kind of spot for the organization to be in, and it was this just continued downfall from after the playoff run. I mean, you think about where the Twins were in 2023 and how they kind of reached their 20-year pinnacle. Everybody was in the community excited about them, and then they cut the payroll, and you cut the payroll by $30 million. So then 2024, you have this team that just doesn't have enough kind of depth, I guess, was really the key. And when they fell hard, it went the wrong direction. So they bring back that same group essentially last year with a few additions, and it just wasn't there. And I don't know. That first half was so interesting because there was plenty of talent around, but I just didn't see it working together very well. And I don't know who that falls on. I don't know if that is just an organization that was depressed by the previous 27 months of actions. I think that filtered down everywhere just because, everybody thought, oh boy, we are, and we've just won this first playoff series in 20 years, and this is a great time, and immediately the payroll gets cut. And I just think that just put everybody, it changed everything overnight where 3 guys were making, 50% of your payroll, or maybe it was more like, 60% when the payroll was 130, and Buxton, Correa, and Pablo Lopez were making $71 million. Like, where's the rest of the money? Who are the rest of these players going to be to fill out this roster? I just thought that put them in a bad spot the last 2 years in general. And I don't think it was a great environment for anybody the last couple of years. So I think this has been a good positive change in that direction, but also, you're still working with minimal resources. You just have more, I guess, guys embracing underdog mentalities now. And that feels clear to me. It feels like the clubhouse is on board and working towards working with each other towards things. And it's, they're 23 and 27. So it gives you an idea that regardless of where they are, they're still struggling and it's still an uphill battle. But at least I guess they're on board and in the same direction, I think.
All right, 2 more questions for Dan Hayes from the Athletic Twins. Begin a 3-game series in Boston tonight. I want to ask you about Bailey Ober because his stats are better this year, even though his velocity is down. So my 2-part question, why is his velocity down, and how do you explain, at least in a short sample here, his pitching being better, even though his velo is down?
Yeah, his velocity, that's a good question. I don't know. He's been looking for that now for a while, and it's 1.5 miles down from last year, and it's never a great sign, but I think the reason why he's better is because the rest of his pitches are being commanded better. Last year, he tweaked his knee in spring training. It led to a hip injury. At first, he was able to push through the hip injury, but then all of a sudden, he's making kind of overcompensating for the soreness of the hip, and his delivery got out of whack. He was not able to command the ball. He said at one point that he could know where the pitch was going 10 pitches in a row, and then it'd be like 10 pitches in a row. I have no idea where they're going. And I think he's got enough of stuff and arsenal, and, he's been such a pitcher for his whole career that if he knows where it's going, if he can put it on the spots that he wants to, if he can manipulate the ball and because he's so tall, manipulate eye sights and eye levels for hitters. I think when he has all that working, he just knows how to pitch. And it's definitely, he's an outlier in the game that's, dominated by velocity right these days. But he certainly figured out some things last year working through this. And I think he's just kind of applying that. And it'll be interesting because if the velo keeps going down, that's never a good sign. Somebody made a comp in the press box saying that he's sort of like an end of career Jeff Weaver, where Jeff Weaver would just get by on throwing 85, and it can be done, but there's not a lot of paths, and we don't see a ton of examples. So what he's doing is impressive. There's no question. But you got to hope that he can get some of that velocity back, because even an extra mile an hour will make all the difference for him and put him into an even better spot.
All right, final question for you, Dan. I'm curious, last year they cleaned house before the trade deadline. This year, now Joe Pohlad is in charge. They're kind of in an interesting spot where they're close to a playoff spot, but still also kind of in rebuild mode. How do you think Joe Pohlad is going to approach this year's trade deadline? I know we're still a little bit of ways away and things can change by then, but I look at it and go, well, they haven't had a history of being buyers, and they're not completely in a playoff spot to be buyers, but I don't know if they can just, from a PR standpoint, can afford giving up like a Joe Ryan or a Byron Buxton. So with Joe in charge, how do you think this is good? What's going to transpire here before the deadline?
Yeah, it's definitely, by the way, Tom, Joe was...
I'm sorry. I apologize. Yeah, I said the wrong name.
No,
right.
But yeah, no, I look, I would not want to be in their shoes coming up, because the payoff for Joe Ryan in July would be tremendous. Like, this would be a spot where you could just the way they cashed in last year, and they cashed in last year they did a good job on everybody, because you look at what they've gotten back across the board, and everywhere you look, it's seemingly working out well. And I know fans don't love the Louis Varland trade, and I understand why, because, man, if Louis Varland's here right now, maybe the Twins are 27-23 instead of 23-27. But when you look at Kendry Rojas and what he's got, it's understandable why they were intrigued by that. And, they traded a different version of Louis Varland. He got much better with Toronto. It's something that, aside from that, they did really well at the deadline. And I look at this and it's like, man, Joe Ryan could just fetch so much. But your fans are disinterested, and they are on the ledge if they haven't already gone over it. And it's going to be hard to absorb another trade deadline. And what would trading Joe Ryan mean for Byron Buxton? Byron Buxton cannot be traded, but Byron Buxton can request a trade. And if they keep digging, further in and going towards a rebuild, does that make Byron Buxton change his mind? I don't know. It's a really tough spot. But if they were close and they're in the wild card race, I will say Tom Pollard has talked a very aggressive game. And, the thing is that he might be motivated to ask them to push and make a trade and acquire somebody. But do they do that where it's a bad baseball decision? And that's what they have to do, is they're going to have to toe a line between, being aggressive to be aggressive and show fans that they are committed versus, versus making a silly baseball decision just to show fans they're committed. Because there's no question, he has talked a big game about being aggressive and showing fans that they're committed and turning around. And he hasn't had a chance to prove that very much yet, because he came in so late in the offseason. Look, they could have definitely signed some middling relievers and added payroll that way. They could have tried to take on contracts, but I think that he gets the chance to show what he is talking about in this upcoming offseason, and he wants to prove that. Until he does, we got to see it. And so it's good to hear an owner talking this way and recognizing that the fans are disinterested and that they need to do things different than they have. That's going to be challenging at the deadline, because you don't want to make a silly decision and drive, and hurt what you've been building towards after this last year, because you want to prove to fans that you're for real. So I think the more interesting part will be the off season, but man, it's so tricky, because Joe Ryan could just get you paid, and potentially, a few other guys on this roster they could trade and move on from and get more young pitching. And, it's an interesting time. And I understand why a lot of people outside wondered why they didn't trade Joe Ryan and Pablo Lopez in the offseason, because you run the risk of losing them to injury and losing all their value when Joe Ryan's going to leave as a free agent anyways. And, Ryan Jeffers is going to leave as a free agent. Do you stick with this group and try to push and make a wild card spot, or do you trade and cash in? It's not an easy decision from a PR standpoint, no doubt.
Dan, good stuff as always. Really appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Thanks.
All right, Dan Hayes from the Athletic. Twins in Boston tonight, beginning a 3-game series. We're talking football the rest of the way. Pete Bercich, Vikings Radio Network analyst, joins about 15 minutes from now. But up next, we'll do obligatory daily NFL headlines. But right now, we got a keyword over there, Brett.
That's right. The Fan and BigDeck.com. I'm going to give you a shot to win bonus bucks to the National Cash Contest. Head to KFAN.com. The keyword is family. The keyword family. KFAN.com. Keyword family.
Rock the boat. Don't rock the boat. He's into the end zone for the touchdown.
Time now for obligatory daily NFL headlines.
The Los Angeles Rams announced that they've agreed on a contract extension with quarterback Matthew Stafford. Adam Schefter of ESPN reports the 1-year extension has a base value of $55 million. It can be worth up to $60 million in incentives. Stafford is 38 years old, has been under contract for one more year with a total compensation package of $40 million. What's interesting with this, Brett, is the Rams just spent a first-round pick. Was it 13 overall? Somewhere in that range. on quarterback Ty Simpson, which many thought maybe they reached a little bit to get Ty Simpson. The Stafford thing's interesting because he has kind of been flirting with retirement now for a couple different years. So I get that LA goes, well, we got to give ourselves some insurance if Stafford decides to go, because he can go at any point if he feels like he's too beat up. So they then spend a first-round pick on Ty Simpson. But also, if Stafford wants to keep playing, like, he's showing no signs of slowing down, right? This isn't... Even Rodgers towards the end of Green Bay, like, was showing some signs of not being the same MVP-type quarterback, and maybe the Packers are just trying to get ahead of it. When Stafford plays and is healthy and staying in the game, like, he gives them a chance to win the Super Bowl every single year. So it's just a weird dynamic of... I mean, technically, Stafford could be their quarterback for the next 5 years, even though they just drafted their first-round quarterback. But they're... probably makes it, I guess it's a good problem to have a good quarterback and a potential first-round replacement, but makes it probably a little dicey for the GM and the front office there to have to make decisions and, well, we can't make long-term plans here.
There was the bit going into this past season where, what was it, his back? And everyone's like, I don't know if he's going to be the same, and turned out he was. But the old cliche, and what does Common say about cliches, they're mostly true. The worst time to find a quarterback is when you need one, so may as well stock.
The Vikings know that all too well.
I wasn't going to say it.
We know that all too well.
Obligatory daily NFL headlines.
All right, NFL.com ranked, they came up with each NFL team's next best Hall of Fame candidate. I'm just only going to go through the NFC North.
Okay.
Chicago.
Like actively on the roster right now?
No.
Oh, just in general.
Who's going to make the NFL next?
Well, I mean.
So for Chicago, they actually have two, Lance Briggs, Charles Tillman.
Okay.
For the Lions, offensive tackle Lomas Brown. Who do you think it is for the Packers?
I mean, if it's not A-Rod, I'd be very shocked. I mean, that's just he's a first balloter. Or how about Devontae?
The person they put there, I've never heard of.
Go on.
Let's see if you've heard of him.
Probably not.
Jack Vainisi, contributor.
Yeah, so he's like, he never played on the team. He was someone in the early 1920s.
So you do know the name.
I do. Yeah.
So what they wrote was, Aaron Rodgers will be a first ballot candidate in 6 years, and now eligible Clay Matthews has support after a shorter career, but a dominant 7-year stretch. However, there is real HOF impetus for the brilliant, oft-forgotten Vainisi, who arguably isn't even the most famous person in his family. Younger brother Jerry was the GM for the Super Bowl winning Bears in 1985, but Jack's impact on the game with the rival Packers is unquestioned. Considered one of the modern forefathers of player scouting, Vainisi created this from scratch an entire scouting blueprint and oversaw the acquisition of 8 Hall of Famers, including Bart Starr, Forrest Gregg, Paul Hornung, Ray Nitschke, Jim Taylor, and others over an 11-year span. Vainisi also was instrumental in bringing Vince Lombardi to Green Bay in 1959, setting up the Packers' utter dominance of the 1960s. Sadly, Vainisi didn't get to enjoy the fruits of his labor, dying at age 33 of a heart attack. The grassroots Team Vainisi movement has swelled in recent years, making the overlooked genius a dark horse HOF candidate. You didn't see that one coming, did you?
No, I didn't. I wasn't thinking that at all. At least they
did
said
all this before he died of a heart attack at 33.
Yeah, I know. He did a lot. Yeah, he was one of the Italian connection with him and Lombardi, which was a thing at that point, that how dare you hire an Italian, which seems ridiculous.
Yeah. The Vikings, they have Adrian Peterson, running back. I don't think that's much of a surprise.
That makes sense.
All Day was a rare running back MVP for his era. One of the most explosive runners of his or any other time, holding the single-game rushing record, 296 yards, and author of arguably the best single season by a back in 2012. Kevin Williams was a finalist in 2026 and appears to have a strong case, but Peterson is a slam dunk selection in his first year of eligibility of 2027. That was the question I was going to ask. Is he a first ballot Hall? I think he's definitely a Hall of Famer. First ballot?
If he's not first, he's second.
I mean, you could argue he's top 5 running back of all time.
You could. He's going in the Ring of Honor.
He has his flaws. His hands.
Where do you want to start?
His hands were worse than mine.
Yeah.
He didn't know the playbook. He'd fumble a little bit. But if you put the ball in his hands as a pure runner, it was pretty hard in his prime. There ain't much better. I'd still go Barry Sanders as the best pure runner of all time, but AP was up there.
Yeah. Not the greatest poker player either.
Oh, have you played against him, or?
Well, you don't remember that?
No.
Oh, never mind.
What's the bet?
Didn't he get in a fight with someone over poker?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yes. That's it for obligatory daily NFL headlines. We're talking Vikings football with Vikings radio analyst, Vikings radio network analyst, Pete Bercich. Next, final segment of the Fitz.
If the boats are rocking, Tenna must be talking.
All right, final segment of the Tennafitzgerald. We got to bring on one of my favorite lifeboats to save the show. That would be Pete Bercich, analyst for the Vikings Radio Network. Hi, Peter. How are you?
I'm good. What's going on, Tenna? You good, man? You hanging in there? You just driving a ship? Pretty amazing.
Well,
multi-talented.
Well, that's why I need your help, because I can't do it. I can't do it by myself. That's abundantly clear.
It's always a team. It's a team effort.
It is a team effort.
One person.
I saw you reposting on X the other day, Randy Moss at the Vikings offseason practices. You got to play with Randy. You got to play with Randy Moss. I think he has, for a lot of us, he kind of has one of those mysterious personalities. We want to know more about him. What was he like as a teammate for you?
Randy was he was fantastic. I mean, he didn't. I guess the thing I wish or want people to know about him was just how hard he worked. Right, when I retweeted that about the OTA thing, and it was the first time he'd ever been to an OTA. It was kind of tongue in cheek because his rookie year, if you remember, he had an ankle injury from playing basketball, so he didn't do anything in May in June. In May, minicamp wise, it wasn't until training camp that everybody got the first opportunity to see him in person. And I remember it took probably one or two practices before all the DBs were discussing it among themselves in the defensive meeting about just how good the kid is and the things that he can do. He was talented. He was gifted physically, but he worked very, very hard every single day. He would work in practice. I mean, no matter what, he was just kind of honest, I think, about with the plays and taking plays off, but that was definitely not really who he was. You don't get to be as good as he was just because you have more talent, more than, you're the gifts. It's not just the gifts you were given. He was given plenty. But I think the hard work part of it, the hard work side of it can be overlooked. But he worked real hard, and he was very funny. One of the funniest dudes you'll meet. I told him that when he was on Fox. I said, I just wish you could speak what pops into your mind, because he was one of the funniest dudes you've ever been around. So yeah, it was just an absolute joy to play with the guy.
How long did it take before you knew, like, hey, this guy's special?
Probably 2 7-on-7 drills before. I mean, I never, I did not get a chance to go up against him, nor even when you're in practice, you don't get to see a ton. But yeah, I remember the DBs just kind of huddled up, Corey Fuller and Orlando Thomas and Robert Griffiths, and those guys just huddling together, just saying how good this kid is and how fast he is and deceptively speedy, all those different things. And then being shifty, and then his ability to track a football and, not throw up the arms until the last minute, and deceptively good with his body as well. So those guys were talking about that almost immediately. And, it doesn't take long. It doesn't take long to just cover him a couple times in one-on-ones, and people were starting to realize, yeah, this guy's the real deal. And, he stayed healthy, and was able to have an unbelievable career. I mean, even that first catch he had against Tampa Bay his rookie year, that first touchdown catch was pretty spectacular. And it was just, I guess, the beginning of so many things that we were able to witness. And I know folks look back in '98 and they think then that what a great year. Ended like typical Viking way. But we got, it was a fun ride.
Well, it was the worst of all typical losses, but yeah, thanks for bringing that back up. I've said it on the air before, Pete, and you're a big part of this. The that 98 Vikings loss, I was I think a freshman in college at the time. And
okay?
I remember watching the game, being absolutely devastated. I was literally depressed for like 24 hours. And but like it was a moment in my life where like 24 hours later, I'm like, why am I this upset about a football game I had nothing to do? Right. So I have never, from that point on, I've like never gotten super upset about a sporting event. I love watching sports. I like cheering for all of our teams, but I never let it affect my mood anymore. So thank you for playing a part in that.
I take pride in the fact that, we've numbed a lot of people in this town.
Yeah.
So, throughout the years, but, that was a rough one. I mean,
yeah.
I know personally, we lost, Dixon Edwards, I believe, with the hamstring. He was nicked up. And I believe Eddie McDaniel was as well. So I had played special teams and had a chance to play defense a lot. And at the end of that game, I just remember I left, everything I had, I left it on the field. And I'm lucky in that regard because that's kind of the only way you can accept it is, you did everything you possibly could. Could you've done some things better? Yeah. But, it was a total effort on that day. And it was, what was crazy is physically it took probably 4 or 5 days to recover from that one.
Sure.
So it was that kind of a game physically too.
All right, let's talk about the 2026 Minnesota Vikings. It's May 22nd, and we've heard nothing regarding Harrison Smith. We haven't heard him. Obviously, he clearly hasn't signed a contract, but we haven't heard that he's retiring. So, what's your inkling here? Where are we at in this? What are we waiting on in this decision here?
Probably waiting on him. I mean, obviously. It's a matter of whether or not he wants, in that I think every day that goes by, the likelihood of him coming back is higher and higher, because if he wasn't, then I think this would, it have been a done deal already, right? You'd have been like, I'm done, send my letter into the league and get my severance and away we go. So I think every day that they wait or that he waits, and then don't forget, it's what he tells the team that matters, right? It's what his conversation with Kevin O'Connell is what matters. And, will that be discussed among everybody else or to the public? Probably not. So it's between them. As long as the team has an idea, which direction he's going to head, that's what's most important. So that way, if they need to pivot or bring somebody in, I mean, that was why during free agency and then during the draft, it would have been really important to have an idea of what he's going to do and what needs to happen for him to come back for one more season. So it's a waiting game, but like I said, I think every day that goes by, it's more and more likely that if you're not hearing anything, that he's probably going to come back for one more run.
Let's talk about the quarterback position. I know you love to talk about that, Pete. They go out and get Kyler Murray.
Very important position.
It is a very important position. They go out and get Kyler Murray in free agency, and they've tried to keep this mantra of we're having an actual quarterback competition. I'm not buying it, Pete. I think Kyler Murray is your starting quarterback. Are you buying that this is going to be an actual quarterback competition between him and J.J. McCarthy?
Well, yeah. In this, it depends on how you want to define a competition. Kyler Murray has the experience, and I think if Kyler Murray comes in and wants this position, wants to take this job, wants to get another contract, right? I don't know if anybody I don't know if McCarthy can stop him, right? And that's a big challenge for JJ is right there is to have a veteran like Kyler Murray come in, give it his best shot, and still take the starting role from him. The competition side of it is tough because you get limited reps with the ones, and again, you're not going to see in preseason really any live snaps. So a couple of days of practice against Baltimore might be the biggest key for both of them going into that and having a couple of good days of practice against Baltimore. Yeah, I think the key to all this is just Kyler Murray and what does he want to do there. going to learn the new system? Does he want to spend the time and take advantage of this opportunity to throw the football to, let's face it, 3 pretty darn good wide receivers? So he has an opportunity in all of this as well to show what he's able to do. And if he's smart, he'll take advantage of it. And if that's the case, it'll be pretty difficult to unseat him.
Murray specifically, it seems like his quarterback style is different than how KOC has kind of coached quarterbacks. And that Kyler, yes. He's not under center. He hasn't been under center a whole lot historically. Obviously, he's very mobile. How do you see those two meshing together? KOC's system with how Kyler plays.
Yeah, that's going to be the key. I mean, Kyler was in the pistol 95% of the time, not under center very much at all. Good job at the 3-step drop quarterback. 3-step passing game really hasn't been a big part of what we do. So that might be an opportunity there to develop our shorter underneath passing game. He's Kyler Murray's very, very accurate. He's able to scramble and keep plays alive. And I think, and I had a talk with Alec Lewis about this, is, he'll scramble a little bit on some of the deeper routes and continue to execute the play. It's not like he's scrambling and they're making things up as they go, like when a play breaks down. So he has ways of keeping himself alive in the pocket, which may allow for the Vikings to have a little bit more of a down the field passing game. When he gets in trouble is when he starts scrambling and tries to do too much. And, that leads me into the turnover side of the battle. And I think for this offense and for this team, limiting offensive turnovers is going to be big. It's going to be very big because when we struggle with our quarterback, we've struggled with that. And we've been getting the turnovers on defense, but offensively, if we're going to be aggressive, yes, we're going to turn the ball over. I'm not saying eliminate it completely, but just the more we can keep that number below 20 or around 20 or less, that would be fantastic for the entire team.
You mentioned Kyler now has 3 wide receivers to throw to with them acquiring Juwan Jennings in free agency. Over the last couple of years, Pete, the NFL has been trending more 12 personnel, two tight ends on the field than they have in previous seasons. With a 3rd wide receiver now in Juwan Jennings, does KOC avoid the trend of all these tight ends on the field now that he's got a 3rd guy in Juwan Jennings? And what does Jennings bring?
Well, yeah, I mean, he's a bigger body guy, competitor. I haven't really had a chance to watch a ton of film on him yet. Good in the red zone. You expect that out of him. But you mentioned the 12 personnel. When you have a receiver that can block like that, you can do some of the same concepts that you would with a 12 personnel group or grouping with him as a wide receiver. So, he gives you depth. And he gives you a guy that I think the run blocking side of it is can't underestimate how important that is to this offense. They really, you really depend on wide receivers a lot to make some of the tougher blocks. And the beauty of it is if you can do that with a 3 wide receivers group, you can see what the defense gives you. If they keep bigger people on the field, then you can throw the football. If they go with their smaller nickel or dime packages, then you can just throw the football. It allows you to find the matchup that's in your favor, right, more quickly. So, from the matchup standpoint, that I think is going to be key. And really the whole entire offense, I think that's a huge question, is what is it going to look like if Kyler Murray is the quarterback? I mean, what's going to change? How much of it's going to change? Is the running game going to change? I mean, there's a lot, I think, that's on the table. And, as an offensive coordinator, you have an identity. You don't want to go straight too far from it. But then again, you want to make sure that you call and do things that your players are capable of executing. So you got to kind of tailor what you're doing. And that's the art of the whole thing, right? That's kind of the it's not statistics. It's not data. It's all that. It's kind of that mesh, that fusion of knowing the players that you have and then being able to put them in positions to succeed, which is a lot easier said than done.
I saw via your X post that you did a video on the Vikings YouTube channel breaking down the film of Caleb Banks, the Vikings first-round draft pick. I'm curious. I haven't been able to watch the video yet. Can you give me a Cliff Notes version of what's on that video? And is he a day one starter?
Yeah, I mean, the only question mark I think with him is just the health, right? The foot, the health. I mean, outside of that, he's unique in size. He's unique in speed. One of the plays is a punt safe situation against, I think it was LSU. And, punt safe means the defense is out there just to make sure they don't run the fake. Well, LSU doesn't run the fake, so he just decides that he's going to take a 15-yard head start and hit one of the upbacks, and he about launches them into the next county. So, you love that aggressiveness. You love that physicality. Being tall, he's going to have to learn to play with pad levels. He's going to have to learn to use his hands a little bit better. But, all the tools are there. You see it, right? You see flashes of a Chris Jones type of a player that can be strong and then at the same time be quick and execute. So the sky's the limit with this kid as long as he stays healthy and works his craft.
Chris Jones type of player, you say? That sounds nice to me. That sounds good.
Well, yeah, it'd be amazing. I mean, but that's, again, those guys don't come around too often. They don't grow on trees. I mean, he's 6'6", 325 or 324 that he weighed in. I mean, he outran anybody that weighed more than him.
Yeah.
So you talk about the height, weight, and speed. I mean, and the weight is in his lower body and the way he moves. I mean, people were talking that, before the draft, they're saying, well, the foot issues are because a human being that big isn't meant to move as well as he does. Right.
Sure.
So just a freak of nature in that regard. And Randy Moss is a freak of nature in a lot of ways. So Caleb Banks, I mean, if he comes in, stays healthy, gets to work, he could be a very good football player.
All right, last question for you, Pete. Jonathan Grenard gone. He's in Philadelphia. Is Dallas Turner ready to elevate his play?
I hope so. I think the big difference with Dallas Turner and Grenard was just very physical, right? The physicality of Grenard is what I think the Vikings defense will miss the most. So hopefully you can make that up with, some of the guys like Orange and some of the guys like Banks, get a little bit bigger inside and make it a little bit easier for the guys on the outside. But it's taken a while. It's taken a while for him for the game to slow down, right? And it's starting to slow down. You're seeing him look more athletic, read things more quickly. So yeah, I think he's ready to take on the starting role. It's going to be a little bit different when you're the guy week in and week out, 17 games a season. That's going to be the big transition for him. But he's getting bigger and stronger, and I think he's ready to answer the call, and we'll find out very quickly whether or not Dallas Turner is ready to go, because he's got some shoes to fill.
Yeah.
Grenard was a damn good football player.
We don't call him Orange, by the way. We call him Big Citrus.
Yes.
Big Citrus. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate your time. And
you can't make it up. You can't make it up.
We'll talk to you later in the summer. Appreciate it.
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
See you, Tenna.
Pete Bercich, analyst for the Vikings Radio Network. Like I said, if you want to watch his breakdown, his film room breakdown of defensive tackle